All right, Catherine, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to start off with an introduction in your own words. Who is Catherine?
Kat is somebody who loves to help people by heart. I am someone who grew up in New Jersey. I'm currently in Florida, but I will always be a Jersey girl. And I am Latina, so I am from Uruguay and I have Italian descendant in my family. Very interesting mix. I love it. I love who I am. I love where I come from. I am a huge family oriented person. My family is everything, which I love to get into because my family is so dysfunctional, and I'll get into that later. But
Yeah.
family is everything to me.
I'm super excited to have this conversation and just to learn more about you and your story. We're going to dive deep into the woman that you were before, talk a little bit about little baby Cat and what life was like for her.
I'm the baby of the family, so I was spoiled, and I still am to this day at 26 years old. I'm so grateful for the family that I have because, as dysfunctional as it is, because of my parents' own trauma, they
Hmm.
tried their very best to provide everything for me and teach me whatever they could to help them survive at that time. As baby Cat, my family was just trying to survive, as I said, but there was no emotional availability there. It was provide the food, provide the clothes, provide the schooling system. But when it came to, are you okay? What do you need emotionally? That wasn't there.
That's definitely common, and especially in our communities. I talk about that all the time on my podcast. Like, I'm Puerto Rican, so I grew up, I wouldn't say a dysfunctional family, definitely not the healthiest levels of communication. Talking about your feelings, going to therapy, that was not a normal narrative growing up in my home, right? And I'm sure you can relate to that as well.
Definitely. And because of the topic we're going to touch on today about the domestic violence, again, I love my parents. I don't shame them or blame them for anything that they do because it's just what they're used to and what they were taught over the years. Thankfully, there is no physical abuse in my household, but there is a lot of emotional, verbal, financial abuse in this household. And me growing up in that environment, it's all I knew. That was so normal to me. If you would take me out of my household and put me into a household that didn't have that emotional and financial abuse, I'll be like, whoa, this is what it's
It would
supposed
be
to be like.
uncomfortable for you, though, right? Because it's not something that was normalized for you.
Absolutely. It would be so uncomfortable. So, like, such a different lens. As I grew up, I learned that abuse was love. You know, if you get mad and you say, fuck you, you're this or that, I had to let it out. That's how I let it
Yeah.
out. You're going to take it and you're going to love me or not, leave me or not. That's how it is. Since abuse was very normal in my household, when I grew up and then I started forming my own relationships, if they were abusive to me, which they were, it's normal. If my partner is calling me out of my name or getting upset with me over whatever, then I'm going to have to take it. This
Mm.
is love. I'm going to just have to put up with it and then learn how to
Yeah.
move on from it, whether that's sweeping it under the rug or talking about it and then moving on.
Yeah. What was your first earliest memory? You're in your own relationships. What's the first thing that you remember that happened to you that you're willing to share?
In my earliest relationship, something abusive, getting cheated on. That is the very earliest memory that I have, which is very traumatic, totally abusive. Anyone listening to this, if you think abuse is just somebody hitting you or calling you a bitch, it is abusive, but being cheated on is also very abusive.
And that shit is traumatic as fuck. I'm really glad you brought that up because a lot of people just look over because it's so common and it happens all the time. But it is very fucking traumatic to get cheated on.
It is. That's where a lot of low self worth roots from because you get cheated on and then you start wondering, what did I do wrong? Am I not enough that you're out here looking for something else? So that's the very earliest memory that I have is getting cheated on and not
Mm.
understanding why. And then once it happens, you get into your head, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to leave this person. That was so messed up. This and the third. and then you stay and you tolerate it, everybody's entitled to whether you forgive the person and you decide to move on. But then there's another side of the coin where it's like you forgive them, then it happens again and again and again. And now are you really forgiving them? Or are you just putting up with it because you're scared to be alone? You tolerate it and you normalize it. So it's like, okay, cheating is a thing now.
I can relate a lot to what you talked about. And I know once I started doing my own work and realizing why I was staying in abusive and toxic situations, it's really because of this place of loneliness and lack of self love and all of those feelings that would just sweep under the rug and use someone else to fill that void when I knew I just needed to fill that myself. So, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about your survivor story. Like we talked about, you are a survivor of domestic violence. And I know you said this is your first time talking about it on a podcast. So I just want to say thank you for sharing. Talk a little bit about that journey, what it was like for you.
When it first began, it didn't look like what it seemed. And again, it goes back to me normalizing the abuse. So it was very familiar. It was sort of comfortable in a sense because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is like home. When it first presented itself, it started with the verbal abuse, which is calling each other out of our name. Then it became anger tantrums. So like hot headed situations where you're going back and forth and screaming to the top of your lungs to get
Mhm.
the final last word. And if you're in a relationship where the other person bumps heads with you, you guys are going to go back and forth until the last person is standing down. At the time with my partner, he was always the one standing up. I was already knocked down because it was so exhausting to the point where you just like, I don't even care anymore. I want this to be over. Then it started leading to the physical abuse, both him and I. It wasn't just
Mhm.
him hitting me. And what I want to say to that is when you know how to trigger each other, it's over. And he knew exactly how to trigger me. He knew exactly what to say, how to hit every exact vulnerable part of me to get
Mm.
me to that crazy and how to get a response out of me. And he wouldn't quit until he got a response. So that's when it would lead to the physical abuse. And that lasted for 4 years, from about 16 years old to end of 19. That was like my entire prime time because I'm still developing. I'm still understanding what relationships are. I missed out on a lot because of that toxic stress overload on my system. And I love to talk about this example. This is something that Dr. Nadine Burke Harris always talks about: toxic stress overload. Imagine you're in a forest and you see a bear. If you can imagine that, you can sense your adrenaline overloaded, your eye pupils dilating. You're ready to either fight that bear or you're ready to run away from it. So your immune system kicks in because if that bear gets a lick out of you, your immune system is going to fight back so that you can sustain the wound enough to either run away or survive. So that's what the system does for you. It's so amazing. Now, imagine that bear coming home every single night. We're not in a forest, we're in modern day like life situations, but
Yeah.
imagine that bear, which could be an abusive partner or even traffic, any stressful situation that kicks in that adrenaline and cortisol and your immune system every single day.
That's got to be fucking exhausting.
Not only that, it's so dangerous to our systems. It affects our brain, our organs. It breaks you down after a while, going through that
Mhm.
every single day. When you're going through that, especially as a child or an adolescent, when you're still developing, it is proven to affect your development.
Oh, for sure. Listening to you talk about it when I was in my abusive relationship, I was with him for 10 months. There was a point in our relationship that I would wake up every single day with like nauseous feeling, anxiety, just like heaviness every single day. And that was before the abuse started. My body was already telling me something before it got to where it was. And I think it's so important for us to listen to that feeling and that intuition that comes with the trauma that we deal with. It's really interesting thinking about it. It's like, yo, there was a point that I woke up sick every fucking morning, and I didn't know why.
I actually remember being very sick 5 times a year,
Mm-hmm.
and it would last anywhere from like a week to 2 weeks. Chest pain, stomach discomfort, very high levels of inflammation, joint
Yeah,
pain, acne, stuff that shouldn't be happening when you're a teenager, right? That's not
yeah,
very common. That was my body telling me something has to change because it's going down.
yeah. Talk about that moment. Like, what was it for you that you made that pivot and you were like, I can't do this anymore? What was your like light bulb moment?
My light bulb moment, it was a summer and I couldn't even hang out with my friends
Mm-hmm.
because any time that I wanted to do something for myself or with my friends, it was unacceptable. Any person that was in the situation can understand, but for other people
Mm-hmm.
who haven't been through it, they're like, what's the big deal? I'll tell you what the big deal is. This person was so, it wasn't love, it was a true obsession. Like it was a constant smothering feeling that they wanted to be with me, and if I was with someone else other than them, they would take it personal, like, oh, you don't want to hang out with me, oh, you'd rather be with your friends than me. And it was like this big manipulation.
Yes. That's what I was thinking, like manipulation and this need of control.
Oh yeah. And then the gaslighting, your friends don't even really like you, and all this unbelievable bullshit that you can't imagine. If I did fight hard enough to make it happen, there were consequences afterwards. Okay, go with your friends, see what happens after. I remember this one time that I actually did hang out with my friends. I had to leave early because I had to get the pictures of my actual ass off the internet because that was the consequence of actually going out. That was really my moment. Like,
Yeah.
screw this. This is just next level. Like, everything else was next level, but this is the moment where I had to do something.
Wow. I know. I remember you told me during our one-on-one call everything that happened, and I was just like a fucking lifetime movie. It was crazy just hearing the things that you went through. I'm really glad that you're here to share your story, that you are a survivor, and there is hope for people who are listening. Hearing your point of view is like, damn, this kind of sounds familiar. And this is why I like to have these conversations for those who are might be going through it or have been going through it and they don't feel alone in that process because it can be very lonely, especially in the beginning. So I know that you're a holistic trauma coach and you help trauma survivors release stored trauma from their body. So I want to know, why did you want to become a coach? What was your why? What's the purpose behind it?
Ironically, I actually started off as wanting to be a teacher.
I mean, they kind of go together.
Yes, the only difference is that a teacher actually teaches, a coach asks the right questions so that the person that they're coaching can come up with the solution themselves. I love that empowerment because I can tell you things all day long. I can tell you so many times that man is not good for you. He lies to you, he cheats on you. And I can teach you all the different ways to have a healthy relationship. But it's going to go in through one ear, out the other, just like it did for me. God knows how many times I listened to my friends and family
Mm-hmm.
tell me and warn me. And I'm like, I'll see for myself. That's a prime example. Again, you can be taught anything. Someone can sit there and lecture you for hours. But if you're not trying to figure out the problem on your own, you're never going to really get it. And I love the saying that you can diagnose a problem at the level that it was created. If we create the problem, we're not going to be able to fix the problem because we partially created it because we accepted it. We take responsibility, both of us. And hopefully everybody
Say it
listening does.
again. Say it again because I don't think they heard you.
We need to take responsibility. We
Yes.
accepted to be in a toxic relationship,
Yep.
so we're going to deal with the consequences because that's what responsibility is. And when you look at the problem in a different mindset, now we could come up with solutions. I really think that's the power of coaching. Asking those
Mm-hmm.
questions, having people really digest the question and come up with the answer themselves. Because everybody knows the answer. Everybody, 99% of people, when you ask them a question or when they ask a question, oh, like, hey, what should I do? You already know what to do. You're just afraid to do it.
Mm. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
said that.
Everybody has intuition.
Yeah, like I knew what I needed to do, but I just didn't want to do it. To be completely honest, I was too blinded by love and lust and all this shit that I just overlooked the abuse. But then I got to the point where I was like, no fucking more. Like, I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of going through the same song and dance. And everyone needs to hit that point before they can truly change. So, you work with trauma survivors, and I know that a lot of negative feelings can come up, especially in the beginning. What's some advice you would tell someone who's navigating through those feelings? Because for me, like, I had all those feelings of, I hate you, but I still love you, and I miss you. I feel like shit about myself, and am I the problem? What's wrong with me? Like, I'm sure you felt all those feelings too.
Oh, yeah, so many times. And it's such a cringy feeling because you want to help them and fix them so bad. You really feel like you can do it. Like there's these moments of complete drought, but then you have those
Hmm.
moments of hope. Like, no, like you try to see the bright in the situation or even the good in the person because
Because you do sometimes see the good.
you
Yes.
do so many
You
times.
get me.
Oh my gosh, when I heard your episode about your story where you said, they were a complete monster, but then they would be the person that you fell in love with. That's the part that is so hard
Mm,
because, then they start joking around with you and they start flirting with you and apologizing and you see them for who they are because they're both a monster and a good
mhm,
person. And then you're like, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe this is worth the
yes.
toxicity. My advice is that you don't need to forgive that person to heal. I'm using it as my personal experience leaving the relationship. If you're
Mhm,
listening to this and you're still in the relationship, that's a whole different ball game and advice. If I was still in that relationship, a piece of advice that I would give is put yourself first. Ask yourself, what is it that you need at that time? Whatever that answer that you come up with and what you conclude to will tell you how to move forward. Because it's either going to be get help, leave. There's really some people that don't want to leave, and I get it. I mean, if you're married with kids and you're trying to make it work, God bless you. Even if you are in that situation, I know it's scary to leave and start new, press charges if you have to. Man, that was the scariest part for me. This is my answer to another question about the mantra. My affirmation is I'm the creator of my reality. Whatever I do or whoever I am, that's going to create my reality. So if I want to stay in the relationship and make it work, again, I have to take responsibility that if the damage continues, I allowed it to. I knew everything that was at stake.
mhm. Taking accountability. I talk about that shit all the time on my podcast. Like, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it really is, in my opinion, the first step of really healing from whatever situation you find yourself in. Like, you have to look in the mirror and you have to be like, I did play a part in this situation, as unfortunate as it was. I do have to hold some responsibility in my role.
It is because you knew it was coming. I think the most naive thing that I thought about at the time when I was younger in that relationship was it can't get any worse than this. This is what's happening, and if it keeps happening, I know how to handle it, but it probably won't get any worse than this.
Mm-mm.
Baby, it got worse.
I'm glad you said it. Every single time that the abuse happened, it got progressively worse. And I really want to like drive that in to people who are listening who are like, oh no, it's not that bad. Or like you said, this is the worst that it's going to get. It can get fucking worse. And for us, it did get worse to the point where I almost lost my life. I'm not trying to be dramatic or paint this elaborate picture, but it's real fucking life. It's what I experienced. It's what I went through. Don't take it as something light. I could not be here today to share my story if I didn't take it as seriously as it was.
Likewise, I remember getting so it's not even anger, it was rage at a point where I could have took his life. Let me tell you something about stress too, because we were talking about the bear earlier. When we are filled with excess cortisol, which is our stress hormone, guess what? And this is very scary, and this is why a lot of murders happen. Our executive functioning offline, which means for me to think about oh, okay, if I kill him right now, I'll do time
Mm.
in jail and then I won't see my family anymore. That shit ain't there. All that's activated is back here, which is our primitive part of our brain that saves us. Either you gonna fight or you gonna flight, but that's the only thing on right here. So think of our like apes, cousins, and animals that fight for their life. They don't have the executive functioning part of their brain, their prefrontal cortex. So when we have that much stress and this is offline, you can kill somebody if you are in danger, if you are
That
in a
blind
threat.
rage is like people seeing red or blacking out. That shit is real. You talking about that? I remember I went to one of those rage rooms when I was living in Florida with my sister. This was before I was in that abusive relationship. I was like on my journey of being single, and I had just come out of a really long term toxic relationship. And she was like, let's go to a rage room and let's get our emotions out, right? We had an amazing experience. And I remember towards the end, and the only reason why I remember is because she recorded it. I literally smashed so much shit. And I was like in this fit of rage. And I was just imagining my ex boyfriend, the one before the abusive one. And I was just like, I got everything out. But I literally, like, I blacked out. I did not remember anything that I did because I was so in my emotions and in that moment and just getting everything out. I need to do another one of those because I got a lot of shit pent up in me that I need to let out. But when I saw the video after she recorded, I was like, yo, I don't remember doing any of that. It's crazy what our bodies can go through when we have these intense feelings of rage or anger or even happiness, like all of these things, like our body just, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. In the moments we were both back to regulation and we would
Hmm.
talk about what just fucking happened, we would both agree. I would hear it mostly from him, like, I don't know what happened. It was like I wasn't there. And, it was easy for me to be like, right. But I felt the same way. I
Right.
actually resonated with him, which is why I felt compelled to forgive him because I
Mm.
was acting in the same way. So many people do this, not just women, but they're like, oh, you hit me or you did this, and they do it too. That's why I told myself anytime I tell this story, I'm never going to just put the blame on him because I was just as rageful. I got a nasty attitude. You piss me off, I'm going to come at you. There was so many times where I'm like, I know that if I start this fire or if I continue it at least and feed into it, he might hit me. Oh, I knew that. But I was like, you know what? It was worth it for me. It was
Mm.
crazy the satisfaction I got from going at him because he came at me. I was like, I don't give a
Mm.
fuck if he hits me, I'm gonna hit him back. We were both very toxic. It was back and forth.
I'm really glad that you bring that up because a lot of people don't talk about when you're in an abusive relationship, like that shit can happen. Like the roles can reverse too. And I think that's really common in DV situations that the abuser can also be on the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there were some times where it was very uncalled for. Like, I wasn't even trying to fight or nothing. It
Hmm.
started, a small conversation led to a fight. And it's like, what the fuck, bro? And vice versa, too. Like, you said something to piss me off. I thought it was normal to just scratch your face. All right. So, yeah, it was very normal for us.
Thank you for sharing that and for being vulnerable because I really think, as uncomfortable as this conversation is, it does need to be talked about because it happens way more than we think it does. But we don't know that because we don't talk about it because it's so hush hush, because it's so like, we don't want to talk about domestic violence. What happens in the house stays in the house. No, fuck that. We got to talk about it because it's happening way too often and it's not okay. On your Instagram, you talk a lot about gut health and healing that. Can you talk more about that and how our gut and our mental health relate to one another?
When I learned about this topic, I was like, man, I wish I knew this earlier.
Hmm. It would make so much more sense.
Yeah, because after all the abuse happened, and now I'm like 22, 23, and I'm learning about gut health and the body, I was so determined to find out why is my mental health fucked up. Like, I already knew why because all of the abuse and the trauma that had happened, but like, what is it about that changes the way I feel and my behavior and my resilience? Like, what is it? It intrigued me so much. Like, I wanted to know everything about myself. abuse survivors can relate to this. Like, you lose yourself in those abusive relationships. You come out of it, you're like, who am I? It's like a rebirth. You start like shedding all these layers and unlearning all these behaviors and models that you live by, all of these belief systems that you learn, and you're like, I don't even know if that's mine. I adopted it,
Mm.
but do I actually believe that? I don't think I believe that anymore. When I learned about gut health, and I was actually in PT school, as you can imagine, you learn everything about the body, anatomy, muscles, tendons, all this good stuff. And then you learn a little bit about neurotransmitters, like you probably know serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, GABA, all of these chemical messengers in the body that travel from your gut to the brain, brain to the gut, all in between. I was like, okay, that's cool. I was never a science nerd. But then I met a friend who was really into gut health. She was a marketing professor, and we were just talking about mental health one day. She's like, oh, do you know about gut health? I'm like, a little bit. I know you don't know much about it, so let me tell you a little bit. And for anyone that's listening and doesn't really know much about it, basically, the microbes in your gut tell you who to mate with, tell your brain, which is you, what you feel like eating. If you have more good bacteria in your gut than bad, they're going to tell your brain that you want vegetables and fruits and fiber and healthy fats. When you have more bad bacteria than the good, that's when you go for the potato chips and the starchy carbs and the cookies. They control everything that we do. 90% of our neurotransmitters are in our gut. When there is an imbalance, I love to give this example. Picture that your gut is the latest phone out here. The axis, which is what we call the communication system in between. So that's where your cells are, your hormones, your immune system. So the axis in between would be your connection. Obviously, you need connection to use your phone, or else the phone is worthless. And now
Mm.
your brain up here is the satellite. They're all very important. The gut doesn't work without the brain. The brain doesn't work without the gut, because if you could have satellite but you got no phone, you can't call. And if the connection between is staticky, like you can't hear, there's no communication. If there's no communication and there's an imbalance, your gut could be telling your brain, GABA, for example, like the relax, and you're supposed to be like getting adrenaline so that you can move, move,
Mhm.
move. That's how an imbalance could play in a real life situation. And that feeling that you said where your stomach would get nauseous, a gut feeling is not a lie. Like, it's not just a
Mm.
saying, it's not just like a catchy phrase. It is a real thing. Your gut feeling is your intuition.
Mm. I'm not the only one saying it, y'all. It's a real thing. It's scientific proven, okay? I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who's saying it. Yes.
It is scientifically proven. Your feeling is backed up by science. When I learned about that, I was like, okay, so if I learn how to modulate my gut and bring it back to homeostasis, which is where the body is regulated, then you can have more stress resilience, you can control your mood, you can have better focus. Like, it's a birthright for us to feel great. There should be no reason to have brain fog or any autoimmune diseases where your body is literally fighting against itself. Mood swings, yes, common, not normal. There's so many things that people really like to mistaken what's common with what's normal. Yes, you hear
Mm.
about it all day long. People in the office having 5 cups of coffee a day because they can't stay up, all of these common things, but it's not normal. And we shouldn't
Mm.
normalize it. Energy levels should increase if your gut is in balance, that gut brain connection is in balance. Hormones, majority of our hormones are in our gut. The gut and brain get balanced, so do your hormones. Everything's connected.
That's so interesting how everything's like intertwined in one another. And I talk about it a lot. Like our physical and our mental health really go together. And not a lot of people realize that, like the correlation between the two, right? I think it's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We went to like science class during this episode. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and think about it. Serotonin, this is the happy
Hmm.
hormone. If you are making more serotonin, you will be happier. That ain't rocket science. As
Hmm.
soon as I heard that, I'm like, okay, 95% of serotonin is in the gut. So guess who ain't gonna be depressed no more? If you
Right.
balance your gut. Everyone listening, you're gonna keep hearing this term: gut health, gut health, gut health, gut brain axis, gut microbiome, biota, all of the names. That's what it means, because it's literally the missing link to so many illnesses and mental health concerns.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. If you had the opportunity to say something to your abuser, what is something that you would tell him now, being the woman that you are today?
Ooh, that's really good. This has not been hard for me at all. I'm not discrediting anyone who does have this conversation and has a hard time, because, oh my God, it's hard. And I tell people this all the time. I feel like my past life is this dream that happened so long ago. And I feel like I took myself out of it, and now I can see it from like an outside perspective. And
Hmm.
emotionally, it doesn't like crush me, or I hope that
I
makes
know what
sense.
you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
So when I talk about this, when I even think about my abuser, when I think about even being close to him or talking to him, yeah, I get this nasty ass feeling. And like my gut starts wrenching and all of that.
Mm,
But he doesn't have control over me anymore. And that's such a fucking good feeling.
that's so powerful.
Oh my gosh. I can think about scenarios that would happen and like heated conversations, and that shit slides like nothing. Like, you're not talking to the same woman anymore. That would be my message. Like, you're so powerless.
Mm, I love that. Like, if I could drop my mic right now, I would, but I'm not going to because I love my mic.
And you know what's that shit would piss him off. Like, he would do anything to try to get under my skin. Just knowing that it won't matter, it feels so good.
Mm, I love that. Yes, you're getting applauses in the chat. Absolutely. I definitely need to journal through that question. I haven't asked myself that because, for me, it's still very fresh. It's only been March of 2021, so it's still super fresh. Just comparing the woman that I was back then to who I am now, it's like, yo, I'm a completely different person. And I love the woman that I am now. And I still get triggered. I still have moments. I still have dreams now and then, but just reflecting, I think, is super important to just see who I was then to who I am now. And I just got to give myself my own flowers. Like, yo, I've fucking grown so much. And thank you for letting me realize who the fuck I am because I didn't know who I was back then. So, just a couple more questions. What have you learned about yourself and the type of woman that you are since being on your journey to healing and being Coach Kat?
Yo, I love solitude.
Me too.
No, seriously, and we agreed to this where we didn't want to leave the relationship because we were scared of being alone. And
Mm,
there's definitely a difference between loneliness and solitude. When I was single, which, let me tell you, since I was in late middle school, I haven't been single. And I love relationships, I really do. But when I was finally alone after years, and we were all quarantined or whatever, and I had no distractions. I couldn't, go out with my friends. I couldn't be a
mhm.
workaholic. Because that's the thing. A lot of people say I like to distract myself, but that's not healing. You could distract yourself with anything, but
Yep.
you're just storing the problem away, way back there.
That was me for my entire life.
Yeah, which is a coping mechanism. And you can't blame people for doing it because that's survival. When I was in that single period and I started doing things that I actually liked, I forgot a lot of the things that I liked because you're
Yeah.
always living for the other person and doing what they
Mm,
want to do. Now that you're alone and you're like, I like to draw, I like to dance, I like to work out. I like to sit down and have conversations with my parents and pick their brain about why they're so fucked up.
yes.
And there's so much more to life than fucking being somebody's girlfriend and
Mm.
cleaning up their shit.
Girl, I'm so glad you said that because there is such a power in that solitude, in that level of being alone. Right now, we're at the stage that I'm at. This is the first time that I'm completely single, no distractions, not talking to nobody, nothing. And this is the part of my life where I'm really getting to know myself. It was like a rebirth, and I needed that because I was always living for someone else, always looking for somebody else when I just needed to fucking look in the mirror. And that's probably one of the scariest things that you can do, but that's really how you get to know yourself in that solitude. I agree 100%. I fucking love the peace that I feel right now. And for so long, I was just looking for that shit in other people. No, I want my solitude. I want my silence. I want to go days without talking to people.
Oh my God,
You
that's
know?
the best.
Yes, it's so good.
When you could just talk to yourself.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one doing it.
Yeah. Like when I listen to your story and how you love to paint and you are so talented,
Thank you.
and how he would take time away from your canvases because he was a bum ass
Yes.
and even broke your stuff when he was
Mhm.
pissed. I was livid when I heard you say that. Like, how nice is it that now you could just paint
Yes, I
and be
could just be.
alone, listen to
Yes.
music? Don't have to worry about, oh, I have to paint this in 30 minutes because now I got to take my bum ass boyfriend to his job.
Yeah. That level of peace is something that I will never take for granted ever again. That's definitely something that I've learned about myself. Someone in the chat said we tend to value others' opinions so much. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to know, what is your definition of thriving since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast?
My definition of thriving is staying true to yourself. That is my definition because, man, when you get buried under someone else's character and their passions and living for them, you really do neglect yourself. It's like telling God, put my talents and everything that you have for me over here on hold because I gotta live for this person right quick. And that is unacceptable. Like that's a life scam right there.
I'm glad I'm not the only one saying it, damn it.
And you can't thrive if you're not
Yeah.
being true to yourself. That's self-rejection right there. And you're always going to feel resentful. I don't care who lies to themselves. I love doing this for this person. I love them so much. Let me just put everything for myself in the back burner.
Let's normalize being selfish, right? Selfish not being like a negative word. I feel like so many people, it's like, oh, you're selfish. Yeah, I'm fucking selfish. Thank you. Absolutely. I love myself that much that I'm going to put myself first. Let's normalize that.
One more thing. When I started putting myself first, I show up for other people so much better with no resentment. When you do something for someone over and over and over again, you will resent
Mhm.
them. You will start being like, man, like I'm always doing this and that for that person. And you start looking at them all like weird. So when you put yourself first and you do become selfish, you show up so much better for other people. You become like,
Like the best version of you.
yeah,
I love that. This is going to be the last question since you already answered the mantra one. Go back to your younger self. What's one piece of advice you would tell her?
no matter what happens to you or what people do to you, don't change your heart. And I haven't. I know it's easy for your heart to turn into cold because so many people do you nasty, and it's so easy to lose trust in the world and in
Mm-hmm.
people and in society and even in yourself because you start losing trust in yourself. I can't make decisions. Look at all the people that I dated. You start doubting your
Yes.
intuition and your decision making. And one day you decide you want to leave, the next you want to stay. Shit, I'm hot and cold. Can I even trust
Mm-hmm.
myself? I went through that so many times. That would be my advice to my younger self. Always trust your gut. There were so many times that I knew what was happening. I knew what I had to do, and I doubted that. And then that's when you start looking for approval somewhere else and validation and advice from people that won't even follow their own advice. I just had to listen to myself.
Mm. Kat, this has been fucking fantastic. I love your realness. I love your vulnerability. I just love everything about you. When I found you on Instagram, I was like, yeah, she's a whole vibe. We're both from Jersey. I'm so glad that you came on to share your story. So please share with my audience what you're working on, how we can follow you, how we can connect with you.
Yes, so my Instagram handle is at Catherine Flamini. Right now, I'm really excited because I'm working on a group coaching program for trauma
Mm,
survivors.
yes. Oh, we need more of that. I love it.
It's gonna be so fantastic, not just because it's mine or anything, but because like a little bit of everything I share today, I'm going to go more into depth so that trauma survivors can really get to know their biology. and really simplify to the point where you can experience it and actually like see it in your life and in yourself and be like, this is why this is happening. This is why I'm like this. And you can trace it all the way back to childhood. And a lot of people say you don't want to think about the past, put the past in the past. But the way to move forward and grow is to leverage the past. So I'm so excited for that group coaching program. It's been an honor to share my story on here. Seriously, I
I'm
have
so honored.
butterflies in my tummy.
Well, I hope they're good, happy
They
butterflies.
are, which we also get when we're in love.
Yes. Thank you, my love. I'm so honored, and I can't wait to continue watching you flourish and be on your journey. And we definitely must connect and do this again. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.